Why hello, I'm celebrated author Elizabeth Hoyt, writer of the wildly popular series Maiden Lane. You once fell in love with my characters Silence, Temperance, Concord, and Winter Make Peace. Yes, those are names. Well, now get ready because I have a whole new series coming out that you're bound to enjoy. It's called Spinster Street. Be ready to fall in love with a whole new cast of characters. Loudness, Jersey, Spring, and many more characters with non-name names. And please enjoy Bee's channel, Mama Needs to Read Romance. All of 2023 has led to this moment where I get to collab with the fabulous Christi of Christi Reads a Lot to present my top historical romance reads of 2023. Christi and I came up with this together and I am so excited to see her video as well. She is the be-all end-all for me in terms of historical romance and contemporary romance. She knows everything. I'm pretty convinced. It was too hard for me to narrow it down to a top 10 historical romances. So what I did is I narrowed it down to my top 10 historical romance authors for the year. And then I tried my best to pick my favorite by these fabulously talented ladies. I'm presenting them in alphabetical order. We're gonna see some great covers. We're gonna see some fabulous step backs. Do you think I'd let you get through a historical romance video with me without a step back? Not likely. But mostly we're gonna talk about some great books. Without further ado, let's get to it. It's almost appalling to me that I didn't know who Kate Bateman was when I started out this year. I've read countless books by her throughout 2023 and I've enjoyed every moment of it. A Reckless Match, A Daring Pursuit, my personal favorite of this series. A Wicked Game, Desert Island Duke, The Phantom of Drury Lane, Orchids and Mistletoe, the holiday novella from her Secrets and Spies series. But I need to highlight a book that's not even out yet. It's coming out December 26th, so it's almost here. Second Duke's The Charm. This book had it all. Danger, spice, chemistry. We've got a marriage of convenience with hidden identities to boot. Tess is a widow. Now she's out of mourning. She's looking to have a little fun and encounters a gentleman who makes her heart beat faster. They have a bit of a tryst one night and then they discover each other's identities, which rocks their world. He's sworn off love, but I think she gets to change his mind. The problem is she's got more than one or two secrets hidden. And when they come to light, it could be a real problem. Kate Bateman does something I've never seen done before. She wrote a love scene that perfectly captures spice, humor, and even suspense. I don't know how she does it. This book was perfection. I'm so thankful I got to read the arc before it came out. I fell in love with Christina Britton last year when I read Some Dukes Have All the Luck. This year when I got the chance to read What's a Duke Got to Do With It, which was book 2 of the Sinful Spinsters series. This is a spin-off series to the Isle of Sin series. This was another one that had me turning pages like crazy to see what was going to happen. We have a forbidden romance. Two people that were just about to start the greatest love of all get ripped apart and then they're thrown back together 4 years later, but there's nothing either one of them can do about the chemistry they feel because they are forbidden. Oh my gosh, it was so good. This is set at the beach. The ensemble cast was fantastic. And the scene that sticks out in my mind specifically is them on the beach, the two of them staring at one another, his hair gently ruffled in the breeze. And you know something's about to happen. It had me on the edge of my seat. It was fantastic. And he's such a tender, sweet man. Just perfection. Loved it. And I'm so looking forward to the Dukes All That in February of 2024. This author was new on the scene this year, Emma Denny, and I can't believe it was her first novel, One Night in Hartswood. It's an MM romance that's beautifully atmospheric. Set in the 1600s, we have two men that are desperate to break out of the molds that they've each been cast in, and one road trip with multiple hidden identities leads them to make choices that are incredibly difficult. One large problem is one of them is supposed to marry the sister of the other. Each of them has no idea. I was riveted to the page. This was tender, the setting was beautiful, and I loved the deep emotion. I'm so excited to hear that Emma Denny has a sapphic historical romance coming out in 2024. I'm gonna be first in line to read it. Okay, this one's gonna take a minute, but you won't be surprised when you hear what author I'm talking about, Tessa Dare. I had the pleasure of joining Samantha of Books with Samantha, Avery of Ava's Romance Books, Tiffany of Tiff Talks Pages, and Rachel of Rachel Reads and Sings for the Summer of Tessa Dare read along. It was one of the highlights of my year for sure. I got to read and reread some of my favorite Tessa Dare books of all time. We started with A Night to Surrender of the Spindle Cove series, her Christmas novella, A Week to Be Wicked, Book 2, with the infamous Colin. Book 3, A Lady by Midnight, the novella Beauty and the Blacksmith, one of my personal favorites and a great reread for me this year, Any Duchess Will Do. The novella Lord Dashwood Missed Out, and Book 5, Do You Want to Start a Scandal?, which is actually a crossover with the next series we read, Castles Ever After, which started with Romancing the Duke. Book 2, Say Yes to the Marquis, which I wish they had used a plus-size model, because she's plus-size in this. It would have been fun, but it's still a gorgeous cover and step back. Everybody's favorite, When a Scot Ties the Knot. And then we read maybe the most popular series by Tessa Dare, Girl Meets Duke, which is still yet to be complete. The Duchess Deal, one of my top 3 historical romances of all time. Book 2, The Governess Game, which I just adored. And Book 3, The Wallflower Wager. But if I had to choose my favorite of all of these, I would have to say the new one that I read this year that was my favorite, Romancing the Duke. We have a woman who is trying to escape the image that everyone has of her as this child character in her beloved father's children's books. She inherits a castle, but also a gruff, blind man who does not want to move out, so they're forced to live together in this forced proximity romance. He is a prideful man, but the end brought me to tears and the way that he showed her that he loved her and was willing to lay down all for her. I was so moved by this tale and the way that they took care of each other and recognized the true person that they are on the inside when no one else could really see it or appreciate it but the other person. It was beautiful, and I want to read this again and again. Laura Lee Gerke appeared on my radar for the first time this year, and I was thoroughly charmed by Book 1 of the Scandal at the Savoy series, Bookshop Cinderella. We have a girl named Eve who runs her own bookshop. She is a feminist, and she wants nothing more from life. But this rakish duke has decided that he is going to try to get her on the marriage mart, and he places a bet with his friends that he can turn her into someone from polite society within 6 weeks' time. So he makes her his project, but falls in love with her in the process. If you enjoy movies such as Pretty Woman, She's All That, or My Fair Lady, you would love the historical romance take on those tales. I had such a great time, and it has made me want to read far more Laura Lee Gerke in the future, especially the next book in the Scandal at the Savoy series, which is coming June 18th, 2024. I've started doing something new on my channel where I spin a wheel, and whichever author I land on becomes my new historical romance author of focus until I finish one series. I wound up choosing Elizabeth Hoyt recently, whose Maiden Lane series is quite long, so I have not yet finished it, but I've been incredibly impressed by the 5 books I've read so far. Book 1, Wicked Intentions. Book 2, Notorious Pleasures. I really liked this one. Book 3, Scandalous Desires. Oh, it's so good. Book 4, Thief of Shadows. And so far I've only gotten to Book 5, Lord of Darkness. I have quite a few more to read in 2024, but before I do, I must tell you about my absolute favorite, Scandalous Desires. If you've watched my channel at all recently, you've seen me gushing and gushing about this book. It is perfection. We have Silence. She is forced into proximity with a river pirate, charming Mickey O'Connor, when he decides that he needs to protect the baby that was once left on her doorstep. And the only way to do it is to keep this baby in his palace. So Silence, who has been raising this baby as her own for about a year, decides against her better judgment to live with him. He attempts to convince her that he's a bad, bad man, but she sees right through to the core of him, and he sees to the heart of her as well. They awaken some scandalous desires in each other, but the love they share is epic. This book had danger, chemistry, a really hot guy holding a baby. Oh my gosh. It was so good. And she has something in the works for 2024, No Ordinary Duchess, which is book 3 of the Grey Court series, coming on September 10th. Way back at the beginning of 2023, I read all of Eloisa James's fairy tale series and found some to be better than others, but they all have a gorgeous step back, which I finally got throughout the course of the year. So I'm going to show you before I tell you my absolute favorite. We have A Kiss at Midnight, which is James's take on, you guessed it, Cinderella. Book 1.5, Storming the Castle. Pretty much everybody's favorite of Eloisa James's, well, not even just the series, but as an author, When Beauty Tamed the Beast, which was, you guessed it, a take on Beauty and the Beast. The Duke is Mine, which is a take on The Princess and the Pea. The Ugly Duchess, which is James's version of The Ugly Duckling. And we have a swan in the back. And last and also least, Once Upon a Tower, which is Rapunzel, but also Romeo and Juliet. And the With This Kiss collection, a collection of 3 short stories, which includes Seduced by a Pirate. And just like everyone else, this was my favorite of the series. This book was practically perfection. We have a beast, yes, he's a doctor, and he is in a great deal of pain. He has sworn off anything other than performing medicine, basically. But she is forced for a certain reason to stay basically with him at his home/hospital. And the two of them butt heads, and then they discover that they have quite the chemistry. What I found to be so impressive about this novel is she could have just loved him for who he was, and then he could have just become this great man at the end because of her love. But there were aspects of herself that needed to change as well. There were certain things that only his love could unlock in her, and there were elements of peril and angst that Eloisa James delivered in this book that were so gripping, so compelling. I was so impressed by the layers that each of these characters had. They were so beautifully, beautifully written, the flaws and all. It was exceptional. And in summer of 2024, July 23rd to be exact, Viscount in Love is coming out. It's not only a new book, but it's part of a new series, Accidental Brides. I found out about Diana Quincy for the first time this year, and I'm so glad I did. I love her novels that include heroes and heroines of Arabic descent, getting to learn about their cultures, the feminist women, and the men who love them and celebrate them and their careers. It's so refreshing, so different, and I thoroughly enjoyed all of her Clandestine Affairs series, starting with Her Night with the Duke. Book 2, The Viscount Made Me Do It. And Book 3, The Marquis Makes His Move. But my favorite of this series is the one that I don't own yet, Her Night with the Duke. This is supposed to be an age gap romance. It confirmed to me that one of my favorite tropes is forbidden love. These two find each other in an inn one night. She's accosted by some terrible gentlemen, and our hero tries to come to her aid, but she really doesn't need anyone's help because she is very adept at defending herself. Well, he was taken with that and her overall demeanor. She is an older woman who knows herself and what she wants. She's not willing to suffer fools. They do have a night of passion that they can both tell is more, but can't lead to anything else. And then she discovers that he is betrothed to her stepdaughter. This book was, as you can guess, spicy, but also deep. And as I said, I really enjoyed seeing this heroine just lay down the law and tell everybody how it was going to be without being malicious, petty, shallow, shrill. She wasn't any of those things that I often see, those stereotypes that are so old. This was a refreshing woman in her prime, in her power. She was a queen. I loved it. And I loved the hero too. But I'm very excited to read more Diana Quincy in 2024. Speaking of, book 2 of Diana Quincy's Sirens and Silk series, this is book 1, is hopefully coming out in 2024. I had the chance at the very beginning of the year to get an ARC for The Wolf and the Wildflower. I knew I was going to like it before I read it because every other booktuber who I hold in esteem loved this book. I was no exception. It was fantastic. I also had the chance to read more Stacey Reid in 2023, not as much as I would have liked. The first book in the Unforgettable Love series, A Matter of Temptation, as well as the book that came out this year, An Earl to Remember, which I thought was exceptional as well. But the book that I really need to highlight, which you've probably heard of before this year because it's so incredible, The Wolf and the Wildflower. We have a man, he's lived in the wilderness for 10 years and he's supposed to be admitted back into society, and he doesn't really want to be. He is best when he is alone, and that's how he feels. This woman, though, also feels alone. Why? Because she's been living as a man her entire life. It's a secret, but one that he discovers. The two of them awaken things in each other that no one else can. They recognize one another's loneliness, their pain, and the chemistry they have is off the charts. Any scene where they're together, whether it's intimate, whether they're running through fields at night in the rain with lightning in the background, it was all electric. And the end had me crying tears of joy. It was such a satisfying, beautiful, beautiful read, and so unlike anything I've ever read in historical romance. I'm going to close with my final author, Minerva Spencer. This woman actually writes erotica as well as historical romance, which I understood very well after I read The Dueling Duchess. It's book 2 of the Wicked Women of Whitechapel series. I was so impressed by this book and this author because, again, of the way she writes her heroines. They're strong. They actually own their own women's circus. And The Dueling Duchess has quite the backstory. It was very dark, but also compelling. She is a sharpshooter. A duke falls madly in love with her, but is unable to wed her because of her station in life. Well, he sees the error of his ways, but the question is, how much does he have to grovel before she's willing to accept his apology? This was all kinds of fun, but there were elements of danger in this as well. As I said, it was probably the spiciest historical romance I've ever read. The other thing that impressed me so much was the writing was really good. This woman is exceptional in her writing prowess, truly. I've heard nothing but good things about the rest of this series. I really need to read the book that comes before and after this, both of which are out right now. Again, she's very unique, and I'm so glad she writes historical romance because I don't think I could handle her erotica. Those were my top 10 historical romance authors I read in 2023. I'm so thankful I got to share some step backs, some covers, and just gush in general about the books that I loved. What did you love in 2023? Be sure to let us know in the comments. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're enjoying whatever it is you're reading, whether it's historical romance or not. Until next time, thanks so much. Take care. Bye.